Hello and welcome to today's Mind Your Career program. My name is Adam Sylvain and I work with the Alumni Career Development Team here at the University of Chicago in Hyde Park. I'm delighted to welcome you to our webinar entitled Build Your Leadership Resilience, Extreme Self-Care. Today we will hear from alumna Elene Cafasso, a professionally trained executive coach, executive mentor, and president of Enerpace Incorporated. Elene helps rapidly growing organizations elevate their leaders at all levels, producing measurable improvements in business performance. Her leadership insights appear frequently in the press, as Elene has been featured on NBC5 Chicago News, Money Magazine, CareerBuilder.com, the New York Daily News, and Crain's Chicago Business, among others. She holds an MBA from the University of Chicago Booth and is MCC, a Master Certified Coach, certified by the International Coach Federation. Before founding Enerpace in 2002, Elene had a successful corporate career holding executive level positions in the banking and telecommunications industries. Without further ado, it's my pleasure to cede the floor to Elene.
Hello, and thank you, Adam. Hi, everyone. I'm so glad to be with you today. Thanks for joining us. We are going to cover a lot of ground and a lot of content. Now, Adam told you a little bit about me already, but what I'd like to do is do a quick poll to find out some more about you and who's on the line so that I can tailor my remarks to what you most want to hear about. So, Adam, if you will, would you please start our poll?
Yep, so the poll question for everybody who's in attendance is which option best describes you? You've got 5 options to choose from here. I just want to know whether you're employed full-time or part-time, if you're self-employed or a business owner in career transition, or if neither of these options really describe your situation, you can choose other as well. And we'll give just a few more seconds for folks to put in their responses, and then I'll be happy to share out those results.
Thank you.
All right, can you see those results, Elene, or would you like me to read them for everyone on the call?
Why don't you just summarize them for us? That'd be great.
Absolutely. So we've got 68, so the 68%, the majority of our attendees are employed full-time, an additional 18% that are self-employed or business owners, 9% that are in career transition, and 5% in that other category.
Perfect. Well, then we are on the right page for what we're going to talk about today. Now, Adam shared with you my professional bio, but I thought I'd tell you a little bit about the person behind the bio. And I grew up in Oak Park, so you'd see the Frank Lloyd Wright Unity Temple up in the upper left-hand corner. I did my finance degree at DePaul, and then went on and got my MBA in marketing and finance at Chicago Booth. You see the old MasterCard and Visa logos there because I began my career as a management trainee and started in the credit card division at a bank. And by the time we left, we had grown it 500%. And then I moved from credit cards to this newfangled this old-fangled thing called a payphone, just as these cell phones were coming into being. And Ameritech was sort of the best of times and worst of times because we kept reorganizing every 6 to 12 months. And I kept being asked to revise my resume, to repost for my position. And the best of times part, though, was it gave me the opportunity to move through all the different business units at Ameritech. And I ended up, actually, by the time I left, responsible for $1 billion segment of the largest small business customers. But I moved on because I got to where I thought I wanted to be when I grew up, which was VP of marketing in a major corporation. And I just knew there was something wrong with this picture. And what I know now is that I had some core values that weren't being honored. And I now myself have reinvented myself, and as a professionally certified and trained executive coach, I help other people do the same. And so what we do is grow leaders so that they can grow agile, purpose-driven firms. And along the way, I've been trained in leadership agility and certified. And one of the things I'm most proud of is that last year I earned the Master Certified Coach designation, which means I'm one of just about 800 in the world, and nobody tell Booth, but it actually was harder to get than my MBA. So it was a pretty big deal. And I just wanted to let you see some of the great folks that I have the pleasure of working with. I've expanded and added these talented experts to our team. And in fact, Karen, the blonde who's to the left of my photo, also has a Booth MBA, which is how we met. And like me, every Enerpace associate has real-world P&L business experience so that we can be executive mentors as well as executive coaches. And so a lot of the tips that I'm going to be sharing with you this morning actually come from the work that we do with our clients and the things that we use with them and that they share with us. So we'll give you some best practices to choose from. And you might notice the little honeybee in the corner, because recently I've started thinking of ourselves that way, that we cross-pollinate the best ideas and best practices from multiple industries, companies, and leaders. So we help our clients get from where they are to where they want to be more quickly and effectively than they could on their own. So here is the mandatory slide of telling you what we're going to cover today, much like advertised. And as Adam mentioned, we left room at the end of the presentation. So please do feel free to use the chat box as we go along. Adam will be capturing the questions. And if there is some burning desire that you have, or if there's something that's just really too confusing, let him know and he can interrupt me as we go. So we have another poll for you, and that is, what do you know or have you heard the term leadership resilience?
All right, so we'll give folks a few seconds here to weigh in on what leadership resilience means to you. Perhaps you're familiar and have used the term before. Maybe you've heard something of it, but are not too familiar, or this could be your first time hearing the term. So just quick temperature check on this, and I'll be happy to share out the results. All right, so we had a majority, 62%, that have never heard of the term leadership resilience, 23% that have maybe heard of it, but don't know too much, and then just 15% that are using the term themselves. So yeah, a lot to learn.
Awesome, then you guys came to the right place. Thanks, Adam. So we'll spend some time on this then, for sure. And here's a simple definition. Basically, what it's about is the ability to bounce back when you're faced with adversity. And it's not just getting back to where you started. It's actually about adapting and improving because you had the experience. And so what this means to leaders when it becomes leadership resilience is when we are able to actually model for our people the appropriate response. Resilient leaders see struggle and challenges as opportunity. This is where you really get to express your true colors. And instead of moaning their misfortune that something bad has happened, resilient leaders know it's our responsibility to lead no matter what. And actually, you can't become a resilient leader unless you've had the opportunity to go through these types of challenges. It's a way to actually grow and develop. And as I said, be a model for your team and your people. You know, we're on stage all the time when we're in a leadership position. They're constantly watching us. And so this gives us the opportunity to create the energy that we want them to embody as well, because energy is contagious. And then finally, learning from failure. John Maxwell, the business author, stated that, adversity is a better teacher than success if we want to learn from adversity. So if you really reflect about every failure or obstacle, you will uncover a lesson that will be very important for you to learn to be a more resilient leader. And one of the things that we work with our leaders about a lot is executive presence. It's this nebulous concept, but a key component of it is your energy, how you show up. And resilience is a huge part of that. There's a psychologist named Ali Shalfrushin, and I probably mangled that, so my apologies to Ali, who identified these 8 characteristics that are fundamental to leadership resilience. And as we mentioned, the true measure of a leader isn't how they perform during the good times, but if they can share the emotional strength and courage and professionalism when the times are most trying. And ironically, the harder the challenges that you're facing, the easier it is to demonstrate this resilient leadership. And if you think about it, the way you take care of yourself during these times needs to be ramped up so that you've got more available to be adaptable, to be optimistic, to be able to regulate your emotions and practice your emotional intelligence. So here's another couple of quotes that I found that I really liked. And on the left, you'll see that really the only way to build resilience is by working through these problems. And then luckily, as Karen points out, it's not an all or nothing proposition. You don't have to be perfect at this in every area and every competency to demonstrate resilience. And you also don't have to get there overnight. So one of the things we'll be talking about today is some baby steps that you can put into practice to start building your resilience and your energy. So this is a metaphor that I use pretty much daily with my clients. We're going to be moving now sort of from the theory of resilience into the more concrete. How you treat yourself day in and day out creates your capacity to be resilient. I see this all the time with my clients. I think of them as human thoroughbreds. They're high achievers. They're brilliant, intelligent, successful, and they expect thoroughbred performance from themselves every single day. Yet, many of them are treating themselves like a workhorse, 15 or 16-hour days, working on weekends and evenings, working on vacation, never truly unplugging to refill their energy stores. They don't always eat right or make the time to exercise regularly. But by contrast, think about how a thoroughbred gets treated. They get the best stall and blankets, the best hay. They get workouts and massages and rub downs so that when they are on the racetrack, they're able to perform. But, we stay up all night working on a presentation and then expect to hit a home run when we actually deliver it. So think about Michael Jordan. Do you think that if he didn't take care of himself at the utmost level off the court, that he'd be able to hang in the air and make those 3-point shots or rally his team to dig deep in overtime and go for the medal? I don't think so. Here's another way to think about it. The extreme self-care tips we'll be talking about today are really about putting your oxygen mask on first so that you are good for others. And especially when you are managing your professional brand, whether you own your own business and you are the brand, or you're applying for a promotion or a new job, you are the golden goose that laid that egg. And so we need to take care of ourselves accordingly. Why is this important? Well, I use another metaphor, which is to think about the energy of our life as if it's contained in one of those wooden barrels, the kind you see outside of the saloon or the store in old Westerns. And everything in our life either gives us energy or utilizes our energy. And what ends up happening many times, though, is we end up taking out more than we put in. And we've all encountered people that we could just tell when they're at the dregs of the energy barrel. They're just done. There is no more left in them to give. And sometimes it gets even worse, that there are things in our life that are effectively leaks or holes in our barrel. And so what we need to do is to patch that barrel, keep it full, so that we're giving from a place of abundance instead of from a place of deprivation. You know, we've all met people where it feels like like they said, I've given you the blood, the bone, the flesh. What do you want? The marrow? And in a sales situation, we've met people who are just so desperate to sell something, and we might feel sorry for them, but we're still not going to buy it. Or we've seen folks who are desperate for a job, and when they're interviewing, again, you feel sympathy as a human, but we all want to hang out with those that we like, trust, and respect. And frankly, needy is unattractive. So when we're working with clients, we look to make sure that they have more than a one block life, because we all have known people who make their job or their relationship their entire life. And then when that goes away, they're devastated. So extreme self-care is about abundance and having reserves in all areas so that you're not defined by just one thing. Another reason this concept is important is because like attracts like. Whatever thoughts we choose have an energetic vibration. Quantum physics has shown this, and that frequency attracts similar elements. Our thoughts are constantly reorganizing ourselves and sending out an energy. And what we want to attract is abundance. So we need to clear the energy and the space in our life for what we want to attract. Because being needy is stressful. To increase our reserves, it's easier to do if we increase our energy first. And so what we're talking about here is really nourishing yourself by taking it to the next level. All of us are practicing some sort of self-care, or we wouldn't be sitting here today. But when you are under pressure at work, when you're in a career transition, that's the time we actually need to do more self-care, not be the first thing that we cut. So I've given you a little bit of background about energy barrels and the way I think about self-care. But what does extreme self-care mean to you? Would you chime in a few ideas, and Adam will share the great thinking of this group with us before we go any further.
Yeah, so feel free to use that questions box to submit your response to this question. What does extreme self-care mean to you? If you can share a few words on that, I'll be happy to share out what we hear from our attendees. So it looks like I've got a couple responses coming in.
Okay.
Have a few people saying, leaving work at work.
That's a good one.
Having routine, daily meditation, being able to say no, assessing your individual needs and checking in with yourself, but also with others in your life, eating
Those
and
are
sleeping
great.
well. Yeah, so got some good responses.
Yeah, I knew we would from this audience. That's great. And you know what? I agree. It's all of those things and raising the gas. So think about if you're doing them right now at a 5, it's saying, what would it look like to be a 7 or a 9 or even a 10? There are 12 keys, Keys, to extreme self-care. And we will be making available to you at the end a checklist, actually, a progress tracker that itemized them all. But what we're going to do right now is cover the key categories of areas, still sticking with the energy barrel metaphor. So extreme self-care does mean taking care of your higher self. It includes all of the different areas that you mentioned and more. And one thing is that it really doesn't have to cost money. I have a handout with 20 ideas for spoiling yourself silly on a shoestring budget. And so you'll be able to request that at the end just by sending us an email, and we'll send that out to you. So there's lots of things that you can take advantage of without breaking the bank. And it should feel like pampering, not a should, because many times we feel like we should work out. We should eat this healthy cereal for breakfast. Extreme self-care could be as simple as adding your favorite fruit to that cereal. Raising the bar is really the goal that I have for you in these areas. My role model is Oprah. Do you think Oprah is, I don't know, mowing her own grass? Or I said to Adam as we were getting started, boy, you know, if I was Oprah, I'd have somebody be doing my hair and my makeup today. I'd have my stylist standing by for wardrobe malfunctions. But I'm not Oprah, but I can set up my bathroom so that it feels more spa-like, or make my bedroom a sanctuary where I don't bring any electronics. Everything can be delivered now. It's those types of things when we're treating ourselves like a human thoroughbred that we take advantage of. Here's one more key distinction before we get further into the keys for self-care. You know, most of us are very much aware of when we have a pain point. Our anxiety, our uncomfortable, our frustration builds till it hits a peak. We can't take it anymore, so we do something and it goes down for a while. But then it starts rising again till we hit a crisis point, and then we do something. But meanwhile, on the right-hand chart, our basic level of satisfaction in our life is sort of flatlining. And you know, if we were in a hospital and flatlined, that would not be a good sign. So what instead, if we focused on raising that bar as well? Martin Seligman is considered to be the father of positive psychology, and he realized that historically, most psychology models focused on getting the patient from a level of distress, let's say -5, to 0, the blue arrow on the left. But he's like, why do we want to stop at 0? Why can't we go even higher? And so in positive psychology, they work on moving the needle higher, moving into positive numbers and ratings instead of just eliminating the negative. And so this translates to extreme self-care in our energy barrel as follows. There's really only 3 steps. The 12 keys fall into these areas. And first, plug the holes in your barrel. Basically, that gets us to 0. Then focus on filling that barrel daily, because even if you add only 1 extra drop, eventually you'll get to that place of abundance, and you'll be giving from abundance versus from deprivation. And then, of course, we need to keep it going to prevent new leaks. One of the most pesky leaks are those things that we're tolerating. And generally, there are so many things that we're tolerating, from Chicago traffic to Chicago weather, that they can truly become an energy drainer and hide maybe some of the bigger issues that are in our lives. A toleration could be something as minor as a button that you need to sew on, or clothes, a blouse or a shirt you haven't ironed, or they could be as big as just a toxic boss. So the first step in plugging the holes is to figure out exactly what are all these things. And there's really power even in the writing. I've had clients just make a list, throw it in a drawer, and then find out in a week later, pull it out and see how many they've checked off. When we see it in black and white, it can feel overwhelming when it's going around and around in our head, sapping our energy. But when you see it on paper, it's easier to realize it's finite. No matter how long it is, it's finite. And that there are many that you can easily check off the list. Another way to eliminate tolerations is to really be clear on your boundaries. And to me, I define a boundary as the things that people cannot do to me. What is the moat around your castle where you're just going to say no? Sometimes we go to the automatic yes, but there's a cost to that. There's a cost to always being the good girl, the good guy. What we should only be saying yes to things that serve us as well. And it is true that doing charity work, giving back, that gives to us. But let's do those things from a place of abundance versus from a place of should. So one way to strengthen your boundaries, besides becoming more aware of it, is when people are overstepping, call them on it. Many times they're not aware that that's the way they're coming across, or that their assumption is that you will do something you've got no intention of doing. So the first step there is to strengthen your boundaries. And we can talk more about that when we get to the questions if you need some other ideas. Clutter can also be an energy drainer. It's taking up space for what you really want to attract. But again, it doesn't have to be a should. What would make it fun? So for instance, my daughter's 15 and we still had a basement full of all of her little kid toys, which she had piled up in a corner, and it looked like a ski slope. And I said, you know what? You're going to do it, and I'm going to get you a professional organizer because I don't want to do it. And so that was a way that I protected my energy barrel and saved a lot of fights with a teenager to get rid of that pile in my basement that was bugging me. It was something I was tolerating that needed to go away. The next way to plug a hole is to make sure you're treating yourself like the thoroughbred that you are. And there's way more information out there than we could ever cover in a webinar about what's right for the physical you. But the way to make it extreme self-care is to really work with a professional, a nutritionist, dietitian, a holistic medicine practitioner, to find out what your body really needs. There are some things that we do automatically, a late night snack, an automatic glass of wine, none of which is bad on its face, but we just want you to be aware of how is it serving you? And does it cost? Is there a cost to that? Do you wake up more sluggish the next day when you have a glass of wine before bed? I say coaching is 90% awareness so that you can make a conscious choice. And moving your body, it's using the laws of physics, right? A body in motion stays in motion, a body at rest stays at rest. That's why it's easier to do 15 minutes more on the treadmill when you're already at the gym than it is to get there in the first place. So extreme self-care is finding a way of movement that really gives to you, that you look forward to doing. For me, it's yoga. I hate aerobics or the repetitive nature of most kinds of workouts on machines, but I do enjoy yoga because to me, that's also nourishing me spiritually as well as physically. So think about what is your routine now and what would be something that you would truly enjoy doing. Another hole in our life could be the things that are consuming us. Things like resentments that we've been carrying up for years or carrying around for years, an addiction, even if that's in social media, debt, medical problems. And really what happens is if the space of your life is contained in that oval, how much of it is being eaten up by what is consuming you? And there are obviously lots of sources available for help with these things. The first is becoming aware of it so that you can ask for help. Another big one is not trying to rule the world, letting other people make their own decisions. There's a great phrase that I'm told comes from the Polish culture, and it's not my circus, not my monkey, being really clear about what I own and what I don't own, especially with kids, aging parents, co-workers that are not our employees, those kinds of things. Not putting ourselves in the center of every decision. The 80-20 rule I know you're familiar with, but when was the last time that you really stopped and thought about, especially at your job, what are the areas that are getting you most of the results, and what can you say no to? Most of us just run on a treadmill each day. I know I see that in my clients. One of the first things we look at is their schedule. How many of those meetings do you really need to go to? Is the world going to stop spinning if you delegate this to somebody else? Even if everything is important, even when you're told that you have to do more with less, the reality is there's still only 24 hours in the day. So then the question becomes, what are you going to do first, even when you can't say no to a project for your boss? Then we just have the conversation about what's that priority going to be. At the simplest form, when we get overwhelmed, I have found this for myself and I found with my clients, to just take it down to 3 simple questions. Putting all the noise aside, what's most important about today? What absolutely has to get moved forward so that I achieve what's most important in the future? The long-term goals, what's on my objectives for this year? And then based on that, what must get done today? And even put 3 things on a sticky note, and that's your plan for the day. Sometimes that's as much as we can do, but it's keeping you focused in the positive direction. So once we've plugged those holes and leaks, or at least stymied the outflow, then we can start focusing on putting more in and thinking about what really nourishes us physically, emotionally, and spiritually. We need to tap into these perfect sources of nourishment. And for many people, it's connecting with something larger than themselves, whether it is their spirituality, whether it is their vision for their life. When folks are, leaders are working with us on trying to figure out what's next for them, you know, they get to be a certain age in their career, and after about 20 years or so, it's like, what do I really want to be when I grow up? What do I want to achieve with the time that I have left? That vision, that life purpose statement, why am I on this planet, can be inherently energizing. And in coaching, when we talk about values, it's not your morals or your ethics, but rather it's what you really need to have in your life to be your best. And so if you're looking for career fulfillment, we try to get as many of your values honored in your career as possible. They don't all need to be honored by your career, but they need to have a place in your life. And with extreme self-care, we work on, again, turning up that dial to get more of that. So I've had clients come to me who think they need to change careers entirely, but when they got clear on their values and what they really want to create, their vision for their career, I can think of a handful of instances where we were able to do that within their existing job, or by just changing their role within a company versus having to throw it all out altogether. And when we align our goals with our values, they become inherently energizing and motivating. Third step for extreme self-care is to prevent new leaks and eliminating fear, doubt, and worry. Well, that takes my magic coach's wand to make them all go away. But in actuality, there are a few really powerful steps that you can take. Think about reserves and where you have those in your life. Sean O'Casey said, money does not make you happy, but it sure quiets the nerves. So financial reserves, of course, is one area. Reserves of time are becoming even so more precious. Almost every leader I work with is scheduled back-to-back in meetings, which by definition is making them late to the next one. And God forbid they need to take a health break or answer a phone call or an urgent email or text. They're just not positioned for success from the word go. So where can you schedule yourself reserves of time to do your actual work? We build those in. I worked for a leader in telecom, actually, and I don't know if this was her idea or her assistant's, but she actually built in wrap-up time to the VP's schedule so that she would have a chance to show up calm, collected, and on top of things for the next meeting. That's executive presence. that builds your resilience. We talked about earlier embracing the consequences, so that instead of showing up like a victim or that this is a tragedy, to actually say, hey, you know what? We're going to make something out of this, a view that everything is good, even the bad stuff, because if nothing else, we get the lesson from it. And then finally, look at your inner self-talk, your limiting beliefs. We have thousands of ideas and thoughts that go through our head each day. What percentage of those are critical? You should have, you could have, why did you do that? How could you say that? Oh, you always do this. You're too young, you're too old, you're too fat, you're too thin. We call those gremlins, just to personify them a little bit. And you'll see the Cupid doll there. One of my very first clients thought of her gremlins as this troll doll. And she put duct tape over its mouth as a reminder that she just didn't want to hear it anymore. She focused on what she wanted to create. Other ways to do this is to focus on visualizing success. 12-step programs say fake it till you make it, or act as if, and actually get to the source of that fear or worry. Because what gremlins do is they take one kernel of truth and they turn it into a whole phone book of lies as to why you can't have what you want. So what's that real kernel of truth? Many times when folks are in career transition and middle life, they're like, oh, I'm never going to get a job, but I'm 50, I'm 55, whatever it is. And what's the truth? Yeah, there is age discrimination. Yes, it might take you longer. You might need to have more interviews. You might need to network your way in bigger. But do you really mean to tell me that in the history of the free world, no one your age has ever gotten a job? So we peel that back and get to that kernel of truth so that you can move forward. Another way to prevent new leaks is to clean out the old-fashioned Rolodex. Now, today I know that could be contacts or followers or Facebook friends or whatever. But really, who is giving you energy versus who's an energy vampire in your life? It could be a coworker where you just need to say, hey, we have 15 minutes, or hey, I've only got 5 minutes before my next meeting, if you have to deal with them. If it's a family member, the same kind of thing. If you can't make them go away, you can say, hey, mom, dad, sis, I've only got 30 minutes, or I can do this, but I can't do that. Saying no is actually a really powerful thing, and we are entitled to ask for what we need and to phase out those people who are draining us. Become aware of how you feel after you spend time with people, because there are energetic and energy barrel implications to being with others. Another way to prevent new leaks is to come up with even just 10 really good habits. It could be something as simple as, I'm going to do 5 minutes of meditation on the train before I read the newspaper. Or it could be, I'm not watching the news before bed since it's all bad and it drains me and I go to bed with that on my mind. Make it a routine part of what you do. And nowadays that means scheduling it and making sure you have an alarm or an alert set at the time that you do it. Your time for yourself, because it is part of your leadership resilience, needs to be as scheduled as anything else. What kind of structure would support you best? In some cases, it's if you hire a trainer, you know you'll work out. It could be taking a class or enlisting a buddy. Marshall Goldsmith is considered by most to be the leading executive coach. He only works with C-suite, Ford Motor Company, among others. And he actually pays someone to call him every day to make sure that he did the 10 things that he wants to do each day, which includes doing something nice for his wife, talking to one of his kids, because we know that unless you have somebody holding you accountable, you're not going to reach the 90th percent probability of doing that. So here's my question to you. As you think through the 3 key areas of extreme self-care, which one do you think it's going to be hardest for you to do? And Adam's going to put up another poll for us.
Great. So we'll start to see the responses coming in. Again, you've got three options here. So which part of this extreme self-care is hardest for you at the moment? Is it plugging the holes in your energy barrel, filling that barrel daily, or preventing new leaks? So give a few more seconds for folks to register their responses, and then I'll share out the results.
I have a hunch. Let's see if I'm right. And I'll tell you if I'll tell you if I'm wrong. And the
All right.
answer
Well,
is
well, we've got 52%
ah, yep.
that say plugging those holes. Was that your guess as
That
well?
was my guess. I know,
Yeah.
because there's some that kind of feel like perpetual tolerations, perpetual holes. So, um,
Yeah, and then we had an additional 30% that were identified filling the barrel daily, and then the smallest percentage, 19%, preventing new leaks.
okay, yeah, that's congratulations. You are representative of the rest of the population. And if you do have, I want to make this available to you. If you've got something that is really stymieing you on what can I do about this one, I'm happy to brainstorm with you, because like I said, that's the honeybee part of what we do. And I'd be happy to share. And now here, though, I'm going to ask you to share some of your best ideas. Type in the chat box, what's one tip, perhaps something you heard today or something you've been meaning to do that you can put into action to increase your own resilience.
Great. So take a few moments to type your answer into the questions box, and I'll relay a few of those as they come in. So I've got a few coming in here. So one of our attendees said removing toxic people from my life.
Yes,
Using the metaphor of the thoroughbred was another response. Taking
good.
more breaks during the workday. Building space with an emphasis on time, especially.
Yeah,
Um,
those are all great ones. You just made me think of one of my clients. She's an extrovert and she really gets energized by people, but she's also a director of policy. So, of course, she needs like dedicated thought time. And so what she builds in is working on project time and then sort of a walkabout or a meeting with people. So she gets recharged again, and then she can go back to her policy stuff. And then she takes people breaks to fill her energy barrel. So that goes back to what really nourishes you, and you get to design your schedule accordingly. So when we get to a few more slides, you'll have access to my email. And one of the tools or structures that I'd be happy to share with you is this tracker. If you are dedicated to start treating yourself like a thoroughbred and put some of these extreme measures in place to ramp it up, you can use this to track your progress. So happy to send that to you. You may, however, know what works best for you. Some folks use bullet journals. Some people do it in their calendar on their phone. These are a couple I just pulled off the internet, so they can be as simple or as creative as you want. One thing to think about, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this slide, but it's another thought frame for you, is that we all only have 24 hours in a day. So if you list out your external expectations, like your job, the commute, the things, relationships, taking care of your pets, any kind of school or training that's necessary, that's an external expectation. And then there's certain things that we want to do, right? We need to pay bills. We need to maybe practice our faith. There's the self-care. Maybe you have a side project, a hobby, things with your kids. Most of the time, that can equal or exceed 24 hours. And what gets squeezed is self-care. So what would happen if you took that off the top first? Because it's a zero-sum game. And what we really want you to get intentional about is what you're saying yes and what you're saying no to. So I'm I'm pretty sure you've heard the parable of the big rocks, right? If you put the big rocks in first, you have room for all the other things that are important in your life. If you wait and put them on last, they may never fit at all. Just to recap a bit, these are all of the reasons why raising the dial on your self-care can be so important, besides building your reserves, increasing your resilience, and your executive presence. And even the Center for Creative Leadership focuses on resilience, and they've identified 8 key steps or 8 key principles, much like our keys to extreme self-care. And I put checks next to the ones that these categories addressed and that we've touched on today. As promised, here is where you can get more information. There are a couple, well, there's 7 different things on here. So first of all, I mentioned the Extreme Self-Care Checklist and Progress Tracker. If you would like any of these tools, just send us an email, mail@enerpace.com, and you can write us what you want or just put the number and we'll be happy to send it your way. I also offered you 20 ways to spoil yourself on a shoestring budget. And one thing I didn't touch on, but that is available to you, is a leadership skills quiz. And based on your answers to just a handful of questions, it's less than 10, we can send you back some places to look, which include leadership resilience, communication skills, increasing the power of those, emotional intelligence, many other areas based on your answers. So if you'd like that, let us know. Happy to share these slides because I know I was moving quickly and there was a lot of information. Also on our website, enerpace.com, we do send out a monthly newsletter, which is written what I call Google style. So after a little introductory note, we provide links to the best articles that we find each month in the areas of business building, leadership development, and career management. And that way, if you're interested in the topic, you click on through. Otherwise, you can move on. I mentioned the 90% statistic before. The American Society of Training and Development found that if you just hear an idea, there's only a 10% likelihood that you're going to implement it. But the probability keeps increasing as you move up the line in planning when you're going to do it, how you're going to do it, if you tell someone about it. But you don't hit that 90th percentile until you actually have an accountability appointment with someone. So whether it's a friend, a workout partner, a coworker, think about who you can work on this together. Because, as I said, even Marshall Goldsmith needs to do it. And we do offer at Enerpace what we call focus sessions, where we spend some time together just focusing on 1 or 2 items. It could be your executive presence, your professional brand. It could be what you really want to be when you grow up or what's next for you in your career and how to get there. And should you want more information about a focus session or even just to have a complimentary consultation to get that clarity about what's next for you, please don't hesitate to give us a call or shoot us an email. So we'll be moving into questions in 1 minute, but I just wanted to summarize really what we covered today here. Resilience is so important to your professional brand. It's how you show up. It's how people perceive you. It's what people say about you when you're not in the room. And it is a foundational element of executive presence. And so by working to treat yourself like the human thoroughbred and the golden goose that you are, by filling your barrel, it keeps you and makes you more energetically attractive to what you want in all areas of your life. And the tips and tools that we covered today, they're not hard. It's not rocket science. It doesn't need to be expensive, but a few changes can significantly up your game. So, I went in the wrong direction there. And then Adam, you want to share some of the questions, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So if for anybody on our call, we have about 10 minutes left in the hour. If you've not submitted question yet, there's still time. Please go ahead and type in and submit your questions to that same questions box where you've been offering your feedback. To get things started, Elene, I wanted to ask, you mentioned earlier on in this webinar that this isn't a zero-sum. Building leadership resilience is not something you need to do all at once or not at all. Taking some of these extreme self-care steps, it might be difficult for someone to envision, doing this all at once. So just in your work with clients and your experience, do you have any recommendations on good kind of first steps or even sort of 3 things that folks can do to kind of just get started on these things?
Yeah, absolutely. I would start with filling the holes, right? Because that way, even if you put in 1 extra drop of energy each day, it will eventually build up over time. So think about nourishment on all 3 levels. Those would be the first 3 things, right? Is what you're consuming, what you're putting in your body. How is that serving you? Is there a way to maximize that? And there's tons of information available on that. Secondly is, what do you need to be nourished emotionally? Is it a hug? I know that I go into withdrawal if I don't get a hug from my daughter at least a couple of times a day. That's something that I need to be at my best. That's really the question to ask yourself. What do I need to be at my best? Is it time in nature? Is it getting grounded? And then spiritually, what is a practice that is meaningful and that gives to you? To do more of that, because the biggest realization is sometimes that's the first thing that we cut out, and it's actually the thing that we need the most.
Great, thank you. Got a few more questions that are coming in. First, how do you handle others' external expectations imposed on you at work that don't align with your boundaries?
Yeah. The first is to clarify the request, and it could be, I say, so let me get clear about what you're asking me, and then sort of restating that, and asking a bunch of how and what questions can be less confronting than saying, well, why would you think I would do that? You could say, let's say it's your boss that's asking you to put extra hours in on a holiday or to work on vacation, and to say, so how would you like me to honor my commitment to my family to be present on vacation with them and still do this? Or I mentioned about the prioritizing, when it's just keep doing more with less, doing more with less. Okay, got it. What order? What's the priority order that we need this in? You can ask for what you need to be able to say yes to it. You could say, we need to then evaluate what my goals are. There's ways to constrain the request and then ask for what you need to be positioned for success doing it. Say, okay, I could take that on. To be successful at this, these are the things I'm going to need. There's ways of reframing it. If someone actually asks you to do something that's immoral, illegal, and unethical, that truly is crossing a personal boundary, sometimes it's okay to just say no and stop talking. So I feel like I gave you sort of high-level, vague answers, but without knowing the specific situation. I'm happy to talk more offline. I can put up my contact information again, so that if there's something individually that you want to cover, let's chat on a call or do it via email, and I can give you some things that have worked for other clients as well.
Great. This is, I think, a related question, but how do we politely but firmly set boundaries or express our opinions? And I guess as importantly, how do we get ourselves to feel comfortable doing so?
I'll start with the second part of that question. So feeling comfortable is about managing that inner self-talk, and to recognize, David Rock uses an acronym, called scarf, like the kind of scarf that you would wrap around your neck. And it stands for status, certainty, autonomy, relationships, and fairness. And if any one of those things gets challenged, it triggers our reptilian brain. And so many times when we are trying to psych ourselves up to do something, if we just know that part of the self-talk that we're hearing is because that's our reptilian brain that can only fight, flight, or freeze, that doesn't want to jeopardize a relationship, or that is rebelling against unfairness, just understanding the way our brain works helps us to normalize it and take a step back and realize, what's the core principle here? What do I want to happen? We have a right to ask for what we need, but the other party has a right to say yes, no, or make a counter offer without being wrong. So managing the limiting beliefs is normally the first part of that. And then, Adam, can you repeat the first part of the question again so I make sure I answer that part as well?
Yeah, the second part was getting at how to politely but firmly kind of advocate for those boundaries that you've set for yourself.
Yeah. It's as simple as saying, I'm not able to do that. I don't have the bandwidth to take on another project. And that it's about the energy behind that, so that you're not a victim or a martyr. And if it's something that really has to be done, it's like, okay, so what do you want to say? What do you want me to say no to, or to put at the end of the queue, right? To put this first. Neither, even when it's a boss making the request, they don't look good if you fail. You both want the same thing. Focusing on that we're on the same side, and coming from that place and that energy really helps you protect the boundaries.
Great. I think we have time for one last question here. And so we have an attendee who asks, how can you fake tone? When I am stressed, I get a tone that makes everything sound like a complaint, even when I am not complaining. Any tips there?
Yes. Yeah, I totally understand it. So first of all is working out the stress, right? I had a client who, before like a big board meeting presentation, would go to the bathroom stall and like jump up and down and do um, Kundalini breathing, right? To just get rid of the stress, to get it out of your body. And then you've got to practice. So there's a little element of almost of authentically coming from a place of curiosity. So I always ask my clients to say, don't lead with why. That makes people defensive. And to just get curious, ask what and how questions about focusing on the solution. So set the context for what you're about to say, which is, I really want to find a solution for this. I want to make this work. I want to do something that's fair for everybody. So put the picture frame around the conversation, and then you're coming from that place and people will perceive it as such. Write out what you want to say, practice it in your office first, and get as much of the tension out of your body and your face.
Great. Well, thank you so much. Thank you for everyone for participating. A special thank you to Elene for sharing these 12 keys to extreme self-care. Want to remind everyone that our programming continues next week on Tuesday, May 7th at 12 Central Time. We have a webinar titled Reimagining Retirement, Career and Lifestyle Options to Explore. So whether you are approaching retirement or just starting to plan, I hope you'll join us and begin moving toward a meaningful retirement transition. And then the following week on Thursday, May 16th, also at noon, we will be hosting a webinar on solving career burnout, how to get re-inspired. Learn how to re-engage with your strengths and reevaluate your values and priorities so that you can become re-energized in your current role. Please visit our events page at careers.uchicagoalumni.org for the most up-to-date schedule of events. Take care, everyone, and have a great rest of your day. Thank you, Elene.
Thank you, Adam. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. Happy to stay connected. Bye-bye.